Hello, I am Edel Mc Glanaghy and I'm a clinical psychologist, or when I was an emo teenager I would have thought of myself as a more cynical psychologist, because I was so complex nobody could understand me. I was just too cool. Like therapy was like, ugh, whatever. But I decided to pursue it as a career, and I was very lucky to get into training to become a clinical psychologist, and we had to do a thesis, we had to do a research study, and I decided to find out how research was shit. I studied what are the negative effects of doing psychological therapy, because it's really hard. Like, not everybody wants to do it, so I wanted to know more. So I'll tell you about that. And then I qualified, and then I got a job and a beautiful team, really lovely people. I became a team leader, really loved my team, really loved the culture. Got a research fellowship, and then was like, what are we doing that's shit? So I did some research on why people don't come back to our service and what we're getting wrong. So I'll tell you a bit about that. But first, when people say get help and get therapy, that doesn't always mean the same thing. Do we all know there's different types of therapy? Yeah? Well, I'm going to tell you a bit about some of the different types of therapy through vinyl. Yes, so my local charity shop is to blame for this collection, but it all began back with classical music. Back in Vienna, lots of men in suits and pianists. So they're talking about psychodynamic, psychoanalytic therapy. So the old classic, lots of quite complicated, quite hard to access. Only certain types of people can really get into it. It still exists. Some people love it. Most people probably don't listen to it a lot. Is that fair to say? Well, I'm open to heckling if anybody wants to disagree with my view on these therapies, by the way. Then we have jazz. So then we have more person-centered therapies, where it's just like somebody makes a noise, the therapist responds, they respond back and forth, back and forth. It's not my favorite therapy because I like more control over what happens. But again, some people love jazz, some people don't, and that's okay. It's like different things for different folk. So that's person-centered. Then we move on to the kind of rockabilly, kind of, pop rock. So my local charity shop didn't have any Beatles or Elvis kind of cool records, so we had Everly Brothers. And CBT kind of took all of that complicated stuff and made it a bit more accessible, a bit more kind of formulaic. So you have like instruments, you have like 4 or 5 people in the band, you have a chorus, you have much more structure, and made it much more accessible for more people. So CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, are we all familiar with that? I'm sensing a lot of therapists in the room, by the way. I will take your critique after. And then we had more CBT. So this is the greatest hits collection, and there's a CBT for everything. If you've looked up anything on the internet, it will say you can have CBT for it. The CBT for menopause. Davina McCall never told us how to do that. We're just expected to, but CBT is really adaptable, can be used in lots of different ways for lots of different conditions. And you might notice there's the names of women on this. There's Dawn and the Hollies, but there's no actual women on this, because it's quite a male-dominated field. So I wondered what women were up to during the kind of era of CBT. They were bending themselves backwards, trying to get taken seriously in the field. But more women were coming into the field and kind of thinking about different ways to work. And then we hit the 80s. And this is the new wave. People who are too cool for CBT. That's so mainstream. They want to do it a bit differently. They want to do like acceptance commitment therapy. It's pretty much CBT, but a bit cooler. It's about my values. I'm playing my music, man. I'm cool. Or CFT, which is a CBT, but it's based on shame and about connection and about how we're all just, we're all losers, but it's cool. That's kind of cool. So I like the new wave, but I'm a bit cynical about that, but I'm waiting for some heckles on that. Everyone's too polite. What was that? I disagree. You disagree? Oh, I'm polite. And then something different happened, dance music. This is actually a funk record, but again, there's no vinyl for dance. EMDR came on the scene. So EMDR is like lights and movement. It's all about, down the back there's a little rave going on. So EMDR, some of the same elements, so it's thoughts, feelings, behaviors, but it's more centered on memories and reprocessing those memories using lights or using movements and to try and change your relationship with them. So something a bit different. So again, you can do the same thing, but a different different vibe to it. And then last but not least, country rock. Because I love country and I don't really know where it fits in. And it's kind of like interpersonal therapy, so that's a bit like CBT, there's a theme here. But we don't think about the thoughts too much, it's more about the emotions and about the people in your life, so that back and forth. So kind of like thinking about your feelings and other folk and that kind of, I would say country music is thoughtless, but that's probably a bit mean. So as a kind of cynical, emo kind of teenager, I had a very cool eclectic taste in music. I had a very weird taste in music. I found a box recently, and all of these are real CDs from my actual collection in my 20s. I'm going to use these to explain the negative side effects of therapy. So in my research, we asked people who had personal therapy and therapists what they thought were the downsides to taking part. We came up with a neat list of 42 items and broke that down into 8 small categories. I know I need to get better at titling things, but these are the 8 categories that people came back with and agreed were important to let people know about if they're going to take part in therapy so they're prepared. So does anyone recognize this album? Yeah? What's song 4? They just make you worse? That's the first theme. Therapy makes you feel worse. Everyone's so proud for knowing that. So that was one of the themes, that some people, when they start therapy, they start to feel worse. It can feel intense. And again, it's about helping people, that possibly can happen, and hopefully with the therapist understand you can get to the other side of that or how to manage that. But I think it's something people should be aware of before taking part. Next one, I should be embarrassed, but I'm not. I think every girl in the 2000s had Savage Garden. What was their big song? Truly, madly, deeply. So feeling your emotions more intensely is the next adverse effect. So some people felt their emotions just were too big, too strong, and that was quite uncomfortable. And again, something they could be helped be prepared for. So it's not that you shouldn't do therapy for these reasons, it's about you can be prepared for it. Next, REM. Automatic for the people. They have featured in every comedy thing I've ever done, so I think I need to do a whole show about why I love Michael Stein. So this one, what is their biggest song? So the somatic or physical side effects of doing therapy, everybody hurts. That's why I chose this album. Thank you for getting the pun, one person. So some people felt those big emotions also might bring kind of physical discomfort and kind of lead to different effects that you feel in your body, not necessarily your emotions. And then if you're having more intense emotions, it can increase your negative coping strategy. So if you're already drinking, you might drink more, you might smoke more, and it takes those to another level. And again, I should be embarrassed, but Freak Me was a pretty amazing song. I'm seeing knowing smiles, yeah. Eclectic taste in music, that's what I'll say. So the next one, you might recognize the logo in the bottom corner. So this is the single, Don't Look Back in Anger. So for some people, they found that their sense of self or their sense of who they were and how they could have lived can be shook. So they might think, I've had a pretty okay life, and then therapy makes them realize, oh no. And that could be really shitty and really tough. So again, it's, sense of self. That was a tricky one. I was going to bring the Bee Gees, but then that made me spiral into who am I? I didn't do that one. Next one is quite niche. Did anyone else have the Clockwork Orange soundtrack on CD? I love this album. So one of the categories was taking part in therapy feels risky. So you're in a room with a stranger who has more power, who could write anything about you that could be on your record, and it's quite a risky thing to do. It takes a lot of trust, and that again, it's, as therapists particularly recognizing that it's not a neutral thing to do. It is quite risky to come, and you could write anything and that could be on your record forever. So that was something that hadn't been in the literature before, the idea that can feel threatening, can feel dangerous, and can be if, not all therapists are, good. Good enough. The next one was the practical burden. So this one was kind of a nod to COVID. It's okay, computer, when we all went online to do therapy. But practical burden, like coming to appointments, arranging childcare, travel, just like if you're taking an antidepressant, you don't have to do all that planning. So actually therapy asks a bit more of you than other types of treatment. So again, acknowledging that as services, acknowledging that for people taking part in therapy, that this is something that might come up for you. And I wanted to show I'm cool, and actually this is my partner's, not mine. And the last one, that relationships can change. So yeah, if you're taking part in therapy, your sense of self might be changing, you're having big emotions, it can affect your relationships and the people you choose to have in your life. You might develop different kinks, so that might have an impact on all the people in your life. And again, to prepare people for that in therapy, that is a possibility. So they're the 8 potential adverse effects of therapy that I found.